Hey, welcome back. Today, Virginia and I are going to talk to you about banks, financing, the difference between tiny homes, modular homes, double wides, single wides, park models. There's so many small little homes out there now that people are all calling tiny homes, but I can tell you the bank doesn't see it that way. Now, Virginia has done tons of research. She's really good at it, and she's going to share what she found. Now, what she researched was North Carolina state, and that's going to be different from other states, possibly, maybe not. You need to research this out or go to a couple of banks and see, if they'll loan against something with wheels on it that is not attached to property. They'll loan money on an RV all day, but it's not the same as something that's permanently attached to a piece of property. So that's the caveat. You have to really be careful with that. But let's listen to what Virginia has to say.
The tiny homes has really become a hot industry, and people are looking at building tiny homes and what you can and cannot do. So I wanted to give you an idea of the tiny homes that are on the market, the different regulations that pertain to each one, and what happens when you look to sell that home, how the banks look at that so that you can have some value in your property, so that when you go to sell it, I always like to build with an idea of selling, you have an idea of what you can and cannot do. So we live in the United States, but for the most part, they're really divided states because every state has different regulations. So you have to take a look at your state, your county, make sure that when you're looking to build or do something, you are able to do it legally. Because if you want to flip it, you're going to have to make sure that the bank approves it. You'll get an appraisal on it. They won't appraise it if it's not built to code. So there are different kinds of tiny homes. And let me go to my notes. The first one is a manufactured home. It used to be called a mobile home. That has wheels on it. That is what we call a single wide, a double wide. In the industry, that is something that is built a prefab. So it's built within a manufacturing facility, and then it is sold like to the people. It's got wheels on it, so it can go to your place of destination. It's met with certain regulations called HUD, and HUD is manufactured home construction safety standards. So every mobile home, every manufactured home is built to that standard. So that is one type of tiny home. Second type of tiny home is an RV. And people usually know RVs by a travel trailer, a fifth wheel, that kind of a thing, a tag along. And then the new one is a park model. So a park model is also an RV. It has wheels. And the thing about RVs that differentiate it from like a manufactured home that used to be called a mobile home is they're under 400 square feet. So your mobile homes, which are single wide and double wide, obviously they're larger than 400 square feet, but your RVs by law are less than 400 square feet, and those are on wheels. And they're set to a standard called RV Industry Association Standards. There's usually a seal or certificate that you'll see on your RV that you won't have on a manufactured home. So look for that. You'll probably see it in your RV. If you have a tag along, you have a fifth wheel, if you have a park model, look for that certificate, which means that it's been built to those standards. The next one is called a modular home. Your modular home is built the same way as your manufactured home, as your RVs are all built in a prefab facility. The thing with a modular home is there's no wheels. And your modular home is built to the same standards as a stick built. So the modular homes can usually are put, most times 100% probably, put on a foundation, a fixed foundation. So you'll have to have, your engineer or your contractor build a foundation, put your modular home on, and then it becomes real property. Back to the other two, your manufactured home and your RVs are considered personal property because they're not affixed to real property. Now, it gets tricky because when you put, let's say, a mobile home, single wide, double wide, you're putting it on a permanent foundation. It depends on your bank, depends on your state, whether or not when you go to sell that, resell it, whether or not a bank will loan money to your buyer. So you have to check your regulations with regards to that. Legally, once personal property like your RV or your park model or your manufactured home, your single wide, your double wide, once that is affixed to a foundation, legally it's not personal property anymore. It becomes real property. So now you've added value to the land that is situated on, assuming you own the land. So that's always a good thing. Great asset to have the land that you're putting your manufactured home or your park model. So the modular home is not a manufactured home, not a mobile home, and not an RV. It is a prefab built house, like a stick built, that is eventually put on a permanent foundation, and that becomes your home. Now, a stick built, everybody knows that, build from the ground up. You hire your contractor goes and builds your house, and that's a stick built.
How does a shed fit into this scene?
Oh, great question. So a shed does not have wheels, okay, but it's a prefab. Comes with all the walls, the floors, the roof, everything. But the problem with sheds is to turn that into a tiny home. Most states require some insulation with it to become a, permanent tiny home. The regulations in North Carolina right now require a 2x6 construction and an R factor of the walls have to be R19, the floors have to be R30, and the ceiling has to be R38. That's a lot of insulation. So if you buy a shed that doesn't have 2x6 studs in the wall, you're not going to be able to get that insulation, and you won't be able to qualify for a tiny home.
Or what a lot of people are doing is, because they're reasonably priced, and you have to weigh this out, they'll add 2x2s to the existing 2x4s to create that 2x6, and therefore you can put that thicker insulation in there and gain your R factors required.
So I mean, you can do anything you want with your shed. If you're going to use it, you can make a she shed, you can make a tiny home. When you go to sell that, though, that's where you have to consider whether or not you have a tiny home that's going to be recognized by the bank to be able to appraise it as a tiny home. So when you go to buy your shed, keep that in mind. Always look to resell, so that if you're looking to resell it, you want to make a tiny home, get 2x6 construction.
They can make custom sheds to fulfill that requirement, knowing that you want to make a tiny house out of it.
True. So the shed manufacturing companies now are getting wind of this, and so the builders are actually buying prefab sheds 2x6 because it's cheaper for them to buy that than to try to build it. The wood itself right now is so expensive, so they're actually going out and buying these sheds 2x6s that easily convert into a tiny home. So it's kind of cool. So you see a lot of tiny home communities popping up all over the place because it's cheaper for the builders to build a tiny home from a shed than to actually build it from the ground up.
Well, I have another question. Do you have any idea what the maximum size to drag a shed down the road is? Or is it limited to the access points where it's going to be positioned, where it's finally?
I don't know if there's necessarily a size limitation, other than the fact that if they're going to take it on the road, I think if it's larger or wider than 14 feet, they need to get a special permit to drive it down the road. So they can get it, and then it's also accessibility. So if you have a road that's 12 feet wide and your shed is 14 feet wide, guess what? It ain't gonna fit. So you have to make sure the route that they're gonna take your shed down, they can make it, they can fit. Otherwise, they won't be able to.
So talk to me a little bit about height. Is that a restriction, you think?
So
or a bridge is the only restriction?
I think a bridge is, it's definitely the route. So depending on where you live, if you have no bridges, then the height is irrelevant, and then if you have low hanging trees, height is going to be a problem unless you can legally or, cut down the tree so that you can fit your shed. But yeah, keep that in mind when, whether you get a double wide, a single wide, a park model, a shed, those all are going to get delivered already made. They're already already made. So when they go down the road, just make sure that your route that they're going to be taking, they can fit it, to your location.
I have another question. I think I saw someplace in my research that there is a home that they're I thought they were modular homes where they take like the sections, like the walls are separate from the floor is separate, and they'll split it up. Let's say you have you're bringing a home to a location. Everything is built in a facility. So
Right.
you have, let's say, 4 floors, and each one of those floors is 10 by 10. So now you have a 20 by 20 square foot, or you have 6 of those. So now you have a 30 by 20 size place. And then is this true? Is this happening?
Yes. So there's all different kind of manufacturers out there that are making modular homes. And the modular homes can come, like Melanie said, different sections. So they can transport it in different sections. And modular homes now are like off the charts in terms of creativity and their availability and making, round walls and, tapered walls and high ceilings, and they can build one on top of the other. And it's really, really amazing. Modular homes usually come finished with all the appliances, the hookups, the electric, the plumbing, all of that.
So
Where you
you're
won't necessarily
saving-
get that with a shed, because
Right.
the shed's just going to come empty and you've got to put all the utilities into it.
So it depends on how much time and energy you want to put into rebuilding the
And money.
shed.
And money too.
And if you get a modular home, correct me if I'm wrong, modular homes, they don't require all these codes because they're done
Well,
to
they
spec.
require codes when they make it, but when you go as a consumer to buy it, you're done. You don't have to go and get permits to build it. But if you're going to build a shed, you have to go through the process of, getting approval from the county and getting approvals to do the electrical and the plumbing, and, and have to have plans, and it takes time to build a shed to do it legally, So always think, I'm going to resell this, and if I don't do it to code, then a bank is not going to appraise it, so you're only going to limit yourself to cash buyers, which is not as big of a market if you have buyers that can also get financing to potentially buy your property down the road. But yeah, that's a great point.
Is there anything else that the viewers want to hear about banks and different styles of houses? What do you think?
Well, the banks haven't really caught up with the market in terms of tiny homes and sheds and things like that, and even park models. There's park models that are situated on a piece of land on a fixed foundation, and they've actually built houses around the park models. And if a bank at all gets wind that it's a one-time a park model, they will not finance it, which is a problem. And I think that should change, because there's park models that are situated on permanent foundations and fixed. It's not moving. The wheels have been removed, and so why wouldn't they finance it? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can comment in the comments down below and let us know about what you found out about banks and financing, and if there's any loophole for banks to finance. But so far I haven't found any solution for banks, to finance, something that once had wheels, whether it's a single wide, double wide, park model, when you're looking to resell it. When you go to buy these things, sure, you can get financing because it's personal property. They'll put a lien on that, if you're financing it, and then it's yours. You can move it onto your property and put it wherever you want. But when you go to resell it, that's when you're going to have an issue with the banks, because the banks aren't going to loan against something that was once personal property.
So the other thing I was thinking is you could name it a different name. You don't have to, if you call it a tiny home, then you are subject to all these codes and rules. But if you call it a she shed, man cave, home office, obviously utility shed, you could pretty much do whatever you want to do.
Sure.
But again, bank financing probably won't happen because they won't recognize it as a house. So
Right.
the buyer is going to have a struggle with that.
Right. I mean, you can do anything you want on your property in terms of meeting whatever, in terms of using it. Make it a she shed, make it a man cave, make it a cool place just to hang out, make it a casita next to your RV. That's all fine. You can do all that while you own it. When you go to resell it, that's where the issues come in. So keep that in mind. If you're going to put so much money into something and then you can have a buyer finance it to buy it, that's a problem. You limit yourself to cash buyers then when you go to resell your property. That's the problem.
And I'm thinking that buyer, if you do sell it and they pay cash, that's going to be their concern too if they ever want to sell it down the road.
Yes. True.
So anyway, we
True.
hope that these topics, can you think of anything else to add, Virginia?
No, I think that tiny homes are a cool thing, and a lot of people are looking at it, trying to downsize and not have so much responsibility. They're great vehicles. Just keep in mind your resell, what you're able to do. Enjoy them. They're fun. They're economical. They're quick. They're easy. They're done. You buy them finished.
It's a great second home.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to buy a shed, then you have all the fit up. You have to buy the appliances and all that. So, modular homes are really a nice way of going because you can
Price
get
it out.
Yeah, exactly. Because that comes already done. All the appliances are in there, your bathrooms, your kitchens, everything is done with the modular.
Right, but you may not have the money to do all of that right up front, so little by little maybe might be better for you, so the shed option may very well work for you.
Yeah, just get it by 2x6, 2x6 construction if you're going to make it a tiny home eventually.
It really does depend on your finances
Yeah.
and things like that. If you have any questions or comments,
Yeah.
Things we haven't covered, please put it in the description below and
Yeah.
we'll be glad to get back to you. Thanks again for watching.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video on banking and financing. I don't think a lot of people think about that, but there you go. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. See you on the next one.